Where's Ginny, they say. Good evening and welcome to another riveting edition of The Ghost and the Goat. I welcome you back to, I took a little time off last week. I worked, oh good Lord, 73 hours in 1 week, picked up 3 overtime shifts at work, and it was a blast. And my paycheck is going to be absolutely gorgeous next week. But because of that, my co-host also is Bams. He's having some health issues. So he's in recovery right now. He's taking care of himself. He's getting better. Dude, we wish you all the best. Love you, Bams. Get back. This is you need to get better, Bams, because you need to feel better, because this is the time. The Ghost and the Goat, by the way, is a paranormal / sports talk show generally, but because Bams, my sports guy, Bams is a sports guy who's kind of interested in the paranormal, and I'm the paranormal guy who is really into sports. So also, so we kind of like mix it up. Have a paranormal guy on, or a girl, and or a couple, what may have you, and then we usually flip gears to something sportsy and we talk. And there is so much sportsy stuff going on right now, Bams, that this would be a great time. We got my Red Sox fighting for that third wild card spot. They're fighting hard, dude. You get your Phillies, who are like the best team in baseball in the last like 10 years. Good for you, Babs. We got the NFL football season, and my Miami Dolphins, who got to run right through New England and smash the Patriots this year. We got all sorts of good stuff. Hockey, tons. You're a wrestler. Our guest tonight, I think, is kind of into wrestling too. You could have, there's all sorts of stuff you could have talked about, but we're not going to jump on the sports side so much this evening, as we are going to focus on the paranormal. Before I get into that, The Ghost and the Goat is brought to you by A Van Down by the River podcast at avandownbytherivpodcast.com. You might be watching tonight's show on A Van Down by the River podcast, or my own Facebook network, or Bam's own Facebook network, or we have a channel on YouTube called A Van Down by the River podcast. Go figure that one out. You can also catch us. Some of you are actually watching my beautiful face right now, talking to you on Get Haunted, this lovely network that plays all of our podcasts and deals with all of our nonsense and all my internet issues and all my poop, which is now hopefully all washed away. And this is going to be quite the riveting show this evening. So before I get into tonight's guest, just a few things I want to break down. Van Down by the River podcast, we don't only do The Ghost and the Goat, which is this show right here. We also do the mid card, which Bam's wrestling / like UFC sometimes show with Joe. And Joe is the video production expert, I call him, of Three Dudes Brews, which is a pre-recorded vodcast featuring this guy, hence the beer, Newport, Rhode Island. We're going to probably talk a little bit about that tonight. Lovely city. This is not Newport Storm. This is just the Ghost of Newport Storm glass. This is actually, speaking of beer, this is a lovely brew that's now closed down, called Line Cider. They're in East Greenwich, or they were in East Greenwich. They had a lot of good beers. This is one of them. This was called White Knuckle. It's their, or was their White Belgian. So this is like, oh my God, it's like if you ever had a blue moon with like a really ripe orange in it. That wasn't a blue moon. It was just something better. It was probably Line Cider's White Knuckle. But big cheers to Jeremy. Dude, thanks for everything that you did over at Line Cider. You made great beers. I enjoyed your great beers, and I hope to enjoy more great beers. So speaking of great beers, Three Dudes Brews will film our 5th episode. We'll jump on the Block Island ferry and cruise on over to Block Island, where we're going to go to a dive bar. We usually go to a brewery, drink their beer, talk about their good beer, talk about how they make their good beer. This month it's a once a month show. This month we're going to like I said, the lovely island of Block Island, which we might talk about that this evening too, and some other stuff. And we go to the best dive bar in New England. It's called Club Soda. It's owned by a very good friend of mine, also a paranormal guy who owns Block Island Ghost Tours. Check them out. Block Island's got a lot of Block Island's like one of those it's like one of those gems that nobody really knows about, especially if you're a ghost guy or a ghost girl for that matter. There is a lot of ghost stuff out there on Block Island, a lot of horrors of history, if you will. Speaking of horrors of history, that's going to just lead me right into tonight's show. Tune in also for the camping show that we're doing in a month. But anyway, tonight's guest is we're not clowning around tonight. He's He's a paranormal investigator. He's from this beautiful state of Rhode Island that I am also from. He is like myself. He is a you could call him an avid student of history. I don't know if I can deem myself a historian because I didn't really get a master's degree or anything in history, but I love history. I'm forever a student in history. This guy does a no, he does like a show on YouTube. He does like a bit on YouTube called The Horrors of History. We'll play that link at the bottom of the screen. He's a cool guy. He's a good friend of mine. It's good to see him again. Please welcome to the show. If anybody's going to screw up a name, it's me. And if anybody's going to screw up this guy's name, I'm going to try. Here we go. Welcome to the show, Rendrag, Selrahc. Oh God, please, Rendrag. Welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you, Ms. Rendrag Selrahc. It's very French.
I knew you said that.
Very French at the end of there.
Oh,
that's all right.
The Patriot pirate from here in lovely Rhode Island. Welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. I started seeing what you were doing on YouTube with the visiting historical sites and just kind of like there's a lot of like nasty stuff that has happened here, especially in New England, over the last like 400 or so years. That is just like, when you think about like haunted locations, people say like a lot of time, oh, is there like a murder there, or is there a suicide? A lot of times it's just like, no, it's just people that live there. But then there's other times where it's like, yeah, there were like 400 people killed here, or there was like atrocities left and right, and all this exists right in our backyard, and half of it we don't even like really know about it. So, why history? Why history and the paranormal? Why, what's your connection to both?
Well, you can't really have paranormal without history, because you got to have a story behind some of it. I mean, you could have an everyday person that passed away about 20 years ago, but there's still history behind that person that you need to bring out to do your paranormal investigations without with knowing the facts and without looking like an idiot when you're researching this stuff. One of the things I love doing, and I've always been an advocate for this, is I play the part when I go out and investigate. Not only am I a reenactor, I am an avid historian like yourself. I don't have a degree, but I can go hand to hand with some of the guys that do. And sometimes I've been able to put them in their places as far as their facts that they get that are just out of books. And I'm like, guys, you need to gander away from those books that are written by the winners and look into the books that seriously where the truth is told.
Yeah, the whole picture paints, like, you need to paint the whole picture rather than just one side or the other. I completely agree. Unfortunately, the winners of the wars write the history books for the most part.
That is so true. I mean, you can go back into the time of the Romans, and we know what the Romans did when they won. They destroyed everybody else's history and edited theirs in. Of course, Christianity is one of those big things. I do not knock it, but they are one of the others that have, throughout victory, have destroyed other civilizations' history. Just to
right. They're completely guilty for the love of God, I guess. But the winners, even the Puritans came over here and completely annihilated a whole native population over here, and they really did. They did. Yeah. And their history is almost all but lost. I mean, it's that they still have like Narragansetts. Narragansetts have a tribe down in Charleston, and they still do like the powwows, and they still do. They're very traditionally rich. The Wampanoags still have a thing up there. The Pequots have it a little bit better because they have Foxwoods. I feel like them and the Mohegans actually like really scored in the deal. They not only got that land back, but now they're really wealthy, and they're stealing all the money from us, which, good for them. Good for them. We did some awful things: smallpox, Christianity, alcohol, land, greed, all that awful shit that we brought over here. So, all right, you guys get one back. You guys get like one of the best casinos in the country. So, there you go.
I agree. And there's a little, like you were talking about Block Island and the Mohegans.
Oh, yeah, right.
And when we get into a little more of this in a second, but the Mohegans and the Pequot have been really doing their best to fund historical stuff down in Connecticut, like Fort Trumbull. A good portion of that money came from the casinos, and they're building up a fort where the Anglo-Saxons destroyed them. no hard feelings. Let's get this stuff because they know that, hey, this is important. This is part of our culture and our history now.
Right.
But so they're reaching out. Where Rhode Island was really hesitant to put a casino in here, and I see why. But the money could have helped areas like Fort Adams and Witherall, which are falling to the
Oh,
ground now.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, Witherall is, it's a great place. It's anybody who's watching the show, it's in scenic Jamestown, Rhode Island. It's one of the little islands we got over there, and you don't have to pay any money to go over that bridge and go there. And it's like you can go down all these tunnels. It's on a cliff, and it's like it's right around World War One they built it, right? And
It actually started 1799. The first mounds was put there.
Oh, that's a lot
And
older than I thought.
they started building upon it the same time they did Fort Adams with the coastal defense. So they kind of Fort Adams and Witherall were a 1-2 punch if you tried to come into this harbor. And you got past Fort Witherall. One of the things I would tell people is we'd be handing you out applications because you are that damn good to get past that area. Because Fort Witherall, if you look at the where the guns were pointed, they would have nailed anything coming in by land or sea.
Very narrow. Yep. Well, not narrow, but I mean narrow enough with guns. You're gonna hit them.
Yeah, before you got to Fort Adams. If you got to Fort Adams, okay, the dice it's on. But way before that, Witherall had you tied, and that structure actually was Fort Witherall was active all the way through Korean War before they closed it down and gave it over to the state.
Right. It's got old old like where the turrets were for the anti-sub stuff, and then they got the tunnels. If you go into the, I don't know if you've been all the way down, but when I was younger, I went all the way down. It's very, very dark. There's a lot of little animals that I don't happen to like that live in there, and it comes out under the seawall, and that's just like mind blowing, dude. It's awesome. There's like in Point Judith, over by near the lighthouse, east wall. There's that hill, and they've actually made it. I don't know if you've been down there, but they made it. They cleared it all out. They put it like where it was like an anti-sub, anti-aircraft, like one of the marine like lookouts, I guess you could say, during World War II.
Yeah.
Same thing. There's one. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There was 75 millimeters on each of those places, including one on Rose Island and one on Newport, Fort Adams. So they those guns were deadly. Not only could they take care of you in the air, but anything coming sea or land, they had the area covered.
Oh, for sure. Right. And like those, we talk about Newport, Rose Island. You mentioned Rose Island. That's on my bucket list. People ask me, I was like, "Hey, buddy, as an investigator, what's your bucket list?" Rose Island's one of the top because it's tough to get to. You can't always get out there, and the history dates back to the Civil War. It's so much like death and like, not great conditions. Maybe you're on an island in the middle of the Narragansett Bay. I'd love to get out there and like just walk around in the dark. But there, Newport, Fort Adams.
Yeah, we got to make it a thing then, because I used to, one of my Eagle Scout projects was I cleared out the wall. I caught my first case of major poison ivy from there.
Oh, of course.
But that place is extremely haunted, and it actually goes back into the Rev War where they had executed Hessians on that island that were going because Newport was occupied by the British.
Yeah, right.
When the French were coming in, the Hessians were like, "Yeah, we're out of here," and they started taking off, and the British were like, "No, you don't." And they executed them on that island.
Wow. I did not know that. That's the Newport history, though. The Newport is a rich culture. People don't understand like Newport. There's mansions. It's like a very wealthy area, but then it's a very poor area in other ends. But I mean, Fort Adams. When you talk about haunted locations, you can take all the mansions. I'm all set.
Yeah.
I've gone to Fort Adams twice. One of those times was I went twice within like 2 months of each other. A few different groups. We kind of like tagged along and stuff. It's one of it's the biggest fort in North America. Have you ever been to Fort Adams? Have you ever been inside Fort Adams?
I was a tour guide there for a year and a half.
Oh, well, you know exactly what those tunnels, dude. Holy shit.
Yeah. And I ran a lot of the paranormal events. There was days, because I worked not only there before the DEM.
Yeah.
So there was days I went in at like 6 a.m. and didn't leave until 6 the next day. So, and I slept in that place by myself. I do have some good evidence to play for you one day.
Oh,
so yeah,
I do have myself I can tell you, we were in the Crown, so where all the tunnels come out,
Hmm.
and we were in the tunnels, and we were hearing stuff, and I do have like very faint like male voices. We were there with Maggie Florio. You know who Maggie Florio, the Rhode
The psychic?
Island Paranormal Research Group, right? They were
Yeah.
on the other. They were there, but they were on the other side of the fort. There was nobody within like a ways of. There was like not like Leslie, the not Leslie, Couto. I forget his last name. He was
Mike
the
Kutu.
yeah, Couto. He
Mike
took us
Pine.
out
Sorry,
there.
not Pine. It's Mike Pine. His wife's name is Leslie Kutu. He uses her name. His
Yeah,
name is
he
Mike
uses
Pine.
her. Yeah, he got in the
Yeah.
golf cart and he took off. We went into the tunnels. We were experiencing stuff. They were like the K2 was going off. I thought I could hear a faint voice. We come out into the Crown. We're doing an EVP session. Nothing. I was like, all right. So we walk. Joe and I, who's my film guy. Joe's my left hand. We're walking out, and Charles Reese is with us, and he's like, hey, I forgot my recorder. So I'm gonna go grab it. So he goes back into the Crown to grab it. He comes out. He's like, hey guys. He's like, I said I went in there and I said, "Hey, spirits, if you're here, I'm just grabbing my stuff." And there was a man's voice that said, "Hello." I'm like, oh, really? So then we turned around, and we went back in there, and the three of us walk in. I hit the recorder on. Joe hits the video on. I got it on both, and I'm like, "Hey, if there are any spirits here, you'd like to talk to us? I'd like to talk to you." Clear as day, man's voice. Hello. We heard it with our ears. We got it, and there was nobody anywhere near. It gives me the chills thinking about it still. It's just so clear and particular, so awesome. Such an active, such a historically significant. I don't know, not really historically significant, but a great place.
Yeah.
I recommend anybody check it out.
It is definitely, though, I have to correct you. It is very historical significance inside that structure, quite a bit.
Okay.
If that thing wasn't there, that wouldn't have been the deterrence to keep the Southern boys from coming up here.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
and hitting
when
Providence
they,
and Newport and
yeah, the
yep.
second largest out of the 40. It was part of what would be considered a 5 million construction budget, and that was a lot of money because they
That was a
started
whole
this
lot
in
of money.
1824. Took 30 years to complete it,
Wow.
and in that 30 years, it was still being able to defend itself while it was getting put up. The west wall alone, I tell people, had 178 artillery pieces on it alone.
Jesus.
And when they were installed, they did a demonstration. And this is a cool story. When they got it ready to go, they sent out invitations to every country that wanted to come down and see this. And they're like, you want to see how badass this thing is? They set up vessels, dummy buildings across the way, and they let this thing rock. And when this thing rocked, there was actually a fort that used to be where that silly house is on the rocks thing there. And
Yeah,
this
I know
this
what you
wall,
mean.
yeah, this wall not only destroyed that, but any vessel coming in there that was mocked, it destroyed it. And all the foreign countries looked at that and said, "You would be insane to think about coming in that area ever to hit that." Now, a lot of Civil War generals actually were trained there as well, but they would end up defecting.
Yes, Ambrose Burnside.
Yeah, he was us. So he was he was a Union guy. He was in there in 1845, and of course we know he became, general of the Union Army. But here's two that not too many people know about. At that time, his name was Colonel Beauregard. Later in the South would come General Beauregard. He is also the guy that is accredited for capturing Fort Sumter.
Yep, and Bull Run. He was in charge of Bull Run as well. Yep.
Yeah, AKA part of that original 40 forts that was the $5 million. So I kind of sometimes think he might have seen plans here or there that made it a little easier to shut that down because he's trained there as an engineer. The other one I found out last year was General Hood.
Oh wow!
His relative actually came. Yeah, his relatives actually came up to us, and they had a 2-point drawing of the map that his ancestor General Hood had done.
Oh, wow.
And he was discussing to me every time that they sat down with the leading officers, he would roll that out, and he would say, "If we break that blockade, under no circumstances do you hit this fort." That fort, whereas the other forts, I tell people down south, they were easily choked out because there were southern fortifications. It was easy to stop the ammunition and the supplies from coming in there. You don't have food, you can't arm a fort. Fort Adams, however, there's no safe place to put your tents. There's no safe place to put your vessels. And the whole time, that what you would call the Crown is called the killing field. To get into that, you're talking anywhere from 15 to 25,000 casualties the first swing,
Oh,
the way
good
that was
Lord.
set up. In
Yeah.
that time period, you're going to run out of guys. You're going to have to go down and get more people. While you're doing that, Fort Adams is going to be rearming and resupplying itself
Oh,
because Boston and Rhode Island are right in our harbor, and
yeah.
it's a quick access.
Yep.
So Fort Adams was very strategic, and it also later on trained a lot of World War II soldiers that
Yep.
sent them out.
Right.
Very, very impressive guy. He was stationed there twice, only twice, by the way. Our good old fashioned one of our generals, Eisenhower. So they call it
Oh,
the
wow.
Eisenhower House. He's only there twice,
Oh,
though.
yeah. Right. Right. Right.
But
I do remember that. That's.
yeah,
Oh.
so in that time, though, there was a naval officer. I won't say his name because I'm not going to smirch him. Because Fort Adams was given over to the Navy after the Army was done with it in 1945.
Yep.
So the Navy was going to take it apart brick by brick and then Roman torch the whole inside of it.
Oh.
And what ended up happening is, well, Eisenhower found out, and Eisenhower is one of the best World War II generals, during that time period, one of the best.
Yep.
And let's just put it this way: the admiral that came up with that idea lost his job within a week
Oh, wow.
after saying such things.
Good.
However, the fort did fall in disarray because the state didn't know what to do with it. They didn't put a gate on it until the 1990s. Already by then, structures have been stolen out of it. It's been lit on fire. Mother Nature took its thing. Water got where
Yeah.
it wasn't supposed to get.
Yeah.
It's a shame that fell apart. And as far as like fatalities, I mean, yeah, it didn't see battle, but it had over 350 deaths inside that structure
Oh, wow.
from either illness, accidents, or even murder.
Yeah.
So there was quite a bit of that. One of the ghost stories I'll tell you from a gentleman that was killed there. He had actually had enough of being harassed. He'd been harassed by this guy for weeks on end.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good idea to harass someone in a wool jacket in the heat when he's got a musket on him.
Yeah.
Because that young kid, after a while, had enough, and he turned and he blasted the other guy in the stomach.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's funny because that guy's relative came to us last year and said, well, that's my relative. And then we found out this same guy, if all things connect to everything, is related to Lizzie Borden that shot that dude. So
Wow.
what a history and time in that. So yeah, if you go, I can show you which area if we ever get in there. There's a spot where if you ask for stones to be thrown at you, it will do it. It'll throw stones at you.
Wow.
The guy that's gotten shot. I took a group there last year. It was with some Girl Scouts and this young lady. I said, if you ask it to throw stones at you, it'll do it. And she did, and it bounced right off her chest. And she goes, "Oh, this one's fresh." I'm like, I didn't want to say anything. I said, "Those are great targets." But yeah, so she goes, "If you do it again, I'll leave." So bam, does it again, and she starts asking questions. And I told her, I said, "Hey, listen, you promised this thing you were going to leave. I'm sleeping here tonight. Can you please not pee it off?"
Go ahead and get out now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's got enough energy to chuck rocks at you, let's not make it mad.
Right. What else is it gonna do?
Yeah. So she was she did eventually leave, but I've spent countless nights in that place by myself. And I don't scare easy, but there was nights I locked the doors and kept the lights on. Let's just put it that way.
Yep. I believe it. No, I believe it. You get that uneasy feeling. We had I came in first with Deb Perillo. She's a medium from like Cranston. She had a group of people like in the summertime, and we had one thing happen. It was in the bowling alley. And it's weird, this bowling alley there, but they had one of those 360 light things, and it was everything was set up, and that was the only thing that went off, and it was just 1, 2, 3, and something. Can you make it go again? And it just on request, it just kept going, and it went all the way around, and it stopped, and then nothing else happened again. But then the second time we went, like 2 months later, like I got that hello, and then we were walking out of the place in the grass, and Joe was trying to fix his camera and look at what had just happened, and we kept hearing a guy's voice. We thought it was the guy who dropped us off over there, and put our lights on. We're outside. We could hear a man's voice like right in front of us, like maybe 20 feet in front of us, and there was nobody there. That's the most clearest disembodied voices I think I've ever heard in like 20 years of doing this shit, man.
I could do a whole episode on Fort Adams and the paranormal I had there, but that'd take us like 2 hours.
For sure.
I've had a lot of experience. Like I started in that structure when I was 15 years old as a reenactor, before all the stuff was getting done, before it was being made to look semi-suitable. But not even just Fort Adams, but if you go up to Breton Point has quite a bit of history to that. And I'm not saying the Bells Towers, because that was a horse stable.
Yeah,
But
yeah, right.
everything around there, it does have a lot of stuff, a lot of shipwrecks, a lot of suicides off the cliffs, quite a bit up in that area. Newport is like, I consider like the paranormal mecca of Rhode Island when it
It's got that
comes to,
moving water. It's got a lot of that. It's got a lot of that rock, if you believe in that.
yeah,
Excuse me. Oh God, excuse me. The whole geological connection. It's got a lot of dark history. I mean, like some of these guys that own like these cottages, if you will, which were giant mansions. They were some of the most ruthless, greedy, probably awful people that the country knew at the time.
yeah,
And then right across town, you have some of the poorest people living in like the old Navy base. I worked in a group home at the old Navy base, and it was like the ghetto of Newport. It was really, it's like you to see that like socioeconomical classes go from like one end of the town to the next, and it just like dwindles like over by the highlight over by that way, and up in
yeah.
the back there's two projects up that way that are like, oh my God, am I in Newport? And you think Newport, you think of like Thames, you think of the mansions, you think of Breton Point, you think of all the nice touristy locations, but Newport could be a rough town. But yeah, it's a beautiful history, and Fort Adams is, I highly recommend if you're in Newport, you just go there just to walk around. It's just a cool structure, and it's the largest fort in North America. Few things about Rhode Island that people people are like, are you guys part of like New York? No, we're not part of New York. Hey, Damian Smith, how you doing, dude? We're not part of Long Island. We're our own state. A lot of great things have happened in Rhode Island. Rhode Island's been known for centuries for its military might and its like ability to train soldiers really well. And some of our fun facts, we were talking about Block Island earlier. You go out to Block Island, you go down to there's that southeast light up there. That's the lighthouse. It's the southeast corner. It's called Mohegan Bluffs. Mohegan Bluffs is gorgeous, but it has like a wicked, ugly, bloody history. Do you know anything about?
I do know about I just went there about 3 weeks ago with my brother.
Really?
And we hiked it. Now, my brother, I give him all the props. He just had a widowmaker stuck in his chest. He's 52 years old, and he hiked 15 miles with his brother, and he only had to take 3 breaks.
Jesus.
But we wanted to get to the center cemetery where a lot of the Massinis are buried.
Oh, that's a good cemetery, yeah.
They moved them, and then we wanted to get to the main one, which is more like Civil War and modern.
Yep.
But yeah, the Massinis, like Mohegans, like they're jerks. There's no way of saying it. They were jerks back in the day. Maybe not so now, but they caused a lot of issues. And one of course, was trying to take that island away from the Massinis. And those dudes did not take that too well. And they did fight the Mohegans off and pushed a good portion of them off that damn cliff.
Right off that cliff. This is like, we're talking like 400 feet, 400 feet easily. This is a huge staircase. It's probably like, oh God, at least 600 stairs going down all the way to the bottom. That's got to be a good 400-foot drop. And we have some rocky shores here in Rhode Island. I can imagine the awful death that these people endured.
I hate to say it, they started it. So they started it. The Massinis finished it.
Yeah, that's true. They invaded. They asked for the trouble. So I mean, there's that, of course. And that's I got the stone here too. That's the Mohegan Bluffs, the awful bloody history of the Mohegan. That happened, I think, in the mid 1500s. Us, we didn't get over there till about the 1600s, like the mid 1600s. Not too long after Providence, as Rhode Island was founded by Roger Williams. But that King Philip's War, for example. All right, that's another fun history talk that we can talk about. The Great Swamp Massacre. So that was 1675 to 76 was the King Philip's War. It was between the Massachusetts Bay Colony and the Connecticut Colony. Rhode Island was kind of neutral because Roger Williams was really good with the Narragansetts. He had a trading post, which is now Smith's Castle. It was bought by the Smiths. Another fantastically haunted spot. He traded with them. He knew their language. He had good interactions with them. They never had any problems with the Narragansetts. And then the Wampanoags and the Massasoit, they helped out the Pilgrims. Like 40 years later, maybe 55 years later, they had some troubles. Alcohol was probably involved, and they started killing each other. And then King Philip's War started with the chief Indian from. It was almost like a world war in New England at the time, because there were various Native Americans versus various English and Native American tribes, and they were just killing each other off. So in 1675, there was some talk that the Narragansetts were sheltering and harboring Wampanoags, and they invaded. The Mass and the Connecticut troops came in. They met at Smith's Castle, which is in I think it's North Kingston, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And they marched like the 13 or so miles. It was December. They had a scout that was a former Narragansett. He showed them like the back door entrance where the swamp was frozen. They walked right in. They slaughtered easily 300 men, women, and children, elderly. Just burned them to death. Great Swamp Massacre. Look it up in your history books, kids. And then during that fight, there was a man that was seen fighting alongside with the Narragansetts. He owned a farm. His family, him and his brother, owned a farm in Charleston, right, bordering the Narragansett land. His name was Joshua Teft. Are you familiar with the story of Joshua Teft?
I am. Another his gruesome death.
Story.
Yep.
Another only that Rhode Island is known for. Not only do we have the largest fort in North American history, we also have the only case of anybody being drawn and quartered. If you're not familiar with that, if you haven't seen the movie Braveheart, at the end what happens to William Wallace, kind of like, they don't really show you though, but they hang you until you're almost dead, and then they cut you down, and then I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can probably see this. They cut you open and they rip out all your entrails, and they cut off your cash and prizes, and they show you as they're burning all your stuff, and then they chop your head off, and they put you all over town and say, hey, if you do what this guy does, we're gonna do this to you too. Oh, horrifying. And that happened on the grounds of Smith Castle. So another reason why you would think it'd be like ridiculously haunted, because that is an awful way to kill somebody.
Definitely is. A little history behind that too. King Philip's War. I was going to tell you earlier that one of my gardeners actually was, I guess, serving under Roger Williams, Robert Gardner, because Roger Williams, not only was he a great politician, but he was also a great officer during the time. But he worked underneath him, and that gardener was actually a Quaker, which was, if you ever go to where used to be called Billy Goods, across the way, there's a big yellow building there.
Yep.
And in that yellow building, in that front lawn that everybody parties on, that's all buried Quakers. Quakers do not use headstones. They never did. And
no, they use field stones, and they never write on them either. Or if they do, it says like 6 months, whatever year. They never use month names because that's pagan. Yeah, I've done a lot of cemetery work too. It's fascinating, and they face the east, and they don't believe in war or any of that awful stuff. And
well, he did. He helped out.
He sure did.
He was behind the Narragansetts, a lot of them, because a lot of my family members also traded with the Narragansetts and did not believe what was going on was right. So he did. So it just get into cooler stuff with King Philip's War. Actually, I hit an investigation in a place up in Smithfield. It's called the Wilderness. There used to be a fort there, a fortification.
We spoke of this. This is the North Smithfield. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was actually the first place that recorded that there was a dragoon charge into the natives. And the natives were getting slaughtered the first half of it. But the natives were smart enough to say, hey, these guys aren't going to fare so well if we start going to the back. And they started retreating to the back. And as the dragoons were chasing them, they were getting stuck in the swamps. And the natives said, now we got you. And when they started returning favor. That area is another place, 200-300 fatalities. I don't know how it happened, but they said all the dragoons were slaughtered. But just like, Custer's Last Stand, then who told the story? Like, who got out and told the story? Someone had to survive to tell the story. But that place, That's got some nasty energy inside of it. I've had the sound of like it sounds like swords being sharpened come
Oh,
across out of nowhere. My
mm-hmm.
buddy Keith was on top of one of the hills, and he goes, "Hey, Charlie's up there," and I had just seen a spot where a tree branch looked like it got kicked,
Mm-hmm.
and over his box it said, "I'll kill him." I
Hmm.
don't know if it was a residual or something threatening me, but he came running down and said, "Hey, something just threatened to kill you over my box." He goes, "I think it's time to
Right.
go."
And the area is like still a swampy and undeveloped area. I think there's like telephone
Yeah.
wires up that way and stuff, and it's not really. There's nobody out there. I know I drive
Mhm.
by that area frequently because my girlfriend lives up in Douglas, so I go that way sometimes to get up that way. But Smith's Castle, Roger
Yeah.
Williams built it. That was his trading post with the Narragansetts. Then he sold it to Richard Smith, who fortified it in the 1600s. The building still stands after. So these guys came back to Smith's Castle during a blizzard, December 13th, I think, 1675. And a few of the guys died during the blizzard, and a bunch of the guys died during the battle. And they buried them on the property. There's a memorial marker. They're not sure whereabouts it
Yeah.
is now, but there's a memorial marker in the corner. Um, it's sensationally haunted, and then after that, it evolved over the years, became farms. There were a really famous dairy farm in the turn of the 20th century, but in the 1700s in Rhode Island, slavery was a thing here. We had slaves, and on the Smith Castle, they had 40 slaves, probably the biggest plantation or farm here in Rhode Island, and it's hard to like being like a Union boy, being from like the North, we we consider ourselves the good guys because we were more industrial and we didn't believe in slavery and we were a better people. But at one time, we had active slaves. A lot of them Native Americans. Some of them were African Americans that came in through Newport, which is a very Newport awful history, very active slave trade city.
Yep.
So just a ton of awful, negative, bloody hell history that happened at this place. Another place I've been to a few times. Great place to investigate. Check them out.
Yeah.
They do public investigations there. So do it and tell them Buddy sent you.
Yeah. You know that the judge, we get into bloodier history from Smith Castle, was the judge that condemned those 13 pirates to hang. Right.
Oh
That
yeah,
was in Newport.
there's another one.
So,
There's another great. Speaking of
yep.
Newport again, that was what 17. That was before the Revolutionary War, wasn't it?
Yep,
That's
right before it. He had caught 13 of them after a really large battle between the pirates and the colonists.
mm-hmm.
And when they brought them in, they hung the 13. Out of the 13, though, this is where it gets kind of screwy. Only eight of them were actually forced into servitude.
Yep.
What people don't understand is back in the days when pirates took ships, they weren't friendly. That was not one of their MOs. You were either going to serve or they're going to drown your ass or kill you out there. If
Right.
you did not serve a purpose, you were gone.
Right.
Not all pirates did that, but a majority of them did that, especially Newport, which is one of the reasons I portray a pirateer right now, is heavy. And I mean, do heavy in pirateering history.
Oh, a lot of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, one of the guys I'm portraying actually was hired by my relative, which is kind of weird, Caleb Gardner, who was the one that rode the French in during the Rev War. He was also an avid spy, but he had hired this guy, Jonathan, who was a pirateer, and he was paid in his wrecks to go out and mess with those British vessels and come back.
Yep.
If he had gotten caught by the British, pirateer or not, he still would have been treated like a pirate. The unique thing about him that I'm trying to look into is he was thought of so highly that he actually has a resting spot in Trinity Church, and
Oh wow.
they did not do that with pirates. So there's got to be more to this story than I have found, and I'm trying to dig.
Maybe it's
But
a well-to-do.
yeah, so the pirates are all over that area because you were right. Rhode Island and Newport, there's slave trade, and where there's slave trade, there's merchant. Where there's merchant, where there's
Oh, skipping there, dude. Skipping. Come back to me. Come back to me. Oh, he froze. You froze. So where he was saying that where there are pirates during the American Revolution, the Americans didn't have much of a navy, so we hired pirates to. Oh, you came back to me. You hired
yeah,
pirates to fight the British, to interrupt British shipping, to go down the Caribbean, to interrupt British shipping here in the Americas. The British blocked our ports, and they were trying to strangle us, so we tried to strangle them right back because they were fighting bigger and better wars over there in Europe, and they only gave like half a shit about what was going on over here. So we did what we needed to do, and pirates were even before the American Revolution. Like you go back to, I think it was like people like the Boston Tea Party was the big moment for the American Revolution. No bullshit. It started here in Rhode Island. They were attacking from Newport. They were attacking British ships, and then the Gaspee incident. Right? So they were taxing everything that came in here, and us Rhode Islanders, we don't like taxes. I still don't like paying my taxes.
No, I don't either. This state, like, I don't get into politics, but it has gone a long way from what our forefathers have settled.
For sure.
As far as that goes. But
guys who don't like paying taxes, and for sure. And now there's all taxes for everything, but we're not Massachusetts. So
formed as a freedom of religion state, and yet it's one of the worst right now as far as if you try that. They come at you really hardcore with that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. But like they didn't want to like pay taxes on these goods. They ran past the British ship, the Gaspee, chased them. Rhode Island is known for, we have like all throughout the bay. Excuse me. If you ever been on a boat in Narragansett Bay, you'll see these like one's called the Island of Despair and the Island of Hope. They're just like rock formations that come up out of the water during low tide, and they would destroy these ships. So if you know the water, you know where it is. But being from Britain, halfway across the ocean, they had no idea what they were running right into. They walked them right into it. They ran aground. Then us being, the feisty Rhode Islanders that we were, John Brown, the guy who founded Brown University, loaded up a bunch of guys on some ships, went over there. I think they killed the captain, right? Or they shot him.
The captain was actually saved, and he was moved. If I'll give you some stories, he was moved. There was a house right on the southern end of Fort Adams. Used to be a Revolutionary War house. He was moved there and aided back to health. He was not returned to the vessel, but he was not killed. He was moved.
So that's the Gaspee. That's a painting of the Gaspee incident. They set the ship on fire, and it was investigated. I don't think they ever found out who did it. And then a few years later, the Bostonians did the Tea Party. The British were like, the hell with these guys. We're shutting everything down. And but it started here in Rhode Island, right? Boston was just like biting on our shit, and it's kind of good that they did, because we came to their aid in the siege of Boston, all that good stuff. So lots of great history, American Revolution, here in Rhode Island. I think about Rhode Island history, and one of my favorite parts of Rhode Island history is probably the American Civil War. So, and your family, for that matter, your oh, that's lovely. I'm sorry, I was reading a comment. So I'm involved with an organization that has a lot of ties to it. Is he in your direct lineage?
In my direct lineage, Alfred is like direct
grandparent. Yeah,
he's kind of like an uncle, like a great uncle. He was
okay. Well, that's
on
fair.
that side, so he's direct.
Yeah. Gentleman we're talking about, his name is Alfred Gardner. He's about close to my age. He was 42. Oh, you lost me?
No.
Am I here? Can you see me? Can you hear me? Hello? I see me.
What is going on?
Are you skipping? Am I okay?
You back? Lost you again.
No? Hold on. Let me come out and go back.
I see you.
All right. Am I moving?
Yeah, you're still buffering though.
Am I still buffering?
Oh, you were a little bit. Yep.
All right. So if I'm back, right? I'm back. Alfred Gardner, 42 years old. He's a father of two. He's has a wife. They have a farm out in Swansea, which is now Massachusetts, but was then Rhode Island. He had strong religious ties. He was debating about the war after Bull Run happened. He was debating about joining. He ended up signing up for the war. I think it was like the beginning of 1862. He saw combat at some of the major battles in the Civil War: Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Antietam, somewhere else, and then Gettysburg. So Alfred, being the religious man that he was, he carried a Bible with him, and it's in gloss with his name, Alfred Gardner. And as he marched from Rhode Island, he went down to, they were in Norfolk, Virginia for a while, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, which is kind of more to the West Virginia. And then they followed the South up and into Gettysburg, and everybody knows what happened in Gettysburg. So Alfred would write in his diary like messages to his children, or notes to his wife, or like say sitting September 18th, 1862, sitting in a cornfield waiting for Johnny Reb, and they were just in reserve at Antietam. They didn't really do any fighting. Talking about like the smell of corpses, the smell of the battlefield, how it just doesn't sit right in his stomach and stuff. And then he would send letters home to his wife. And every letter that he wrote her, he grabbed some flowers from along the trail and threw it in and sent it home to her. Okay. So Battle of Gettysburg. I'll talk about him first, and I'll go back to the second day. We were talking about that earlier. So third day, Battle of Gettysburg. Lee had exhausted his troops on the north and the south end of the line, the Union line, and they were going to focus on the center. At about approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the Confederates opened up a cannonade that they fired. I think they had close to 150 cannons, and they fired them for close to an hour and a half, sitting right in the Union line, the copse of trees. Right then, Lee ordered Pickett's charge allegedly after he saw the Rhode Island boys come off the field. So during this cannonade, the Gettysburg gun was commanded by your ancestor, your great uncle, whatever. And he was the number 5 man on the cannon. The number 4 man was William Jones. Albert Strait was the sergeant. He commanded the battery. I don't know who the other 2 guys were. Albert was a sergeant, and the other guy, Gardner, was a private. They after the attack started, after the cannonade started, they got their shit together. They started loading stuff up. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you a picture of the gun itself. And present and share screen. And as they're loading the cannon, a Confederate shell comes in and hits. Here we go. This will just be easier. All right, so you can see what I see. You see the cannon here?
Yeah.
All right, so comes in. You can't really see. This is not a great shit.
Yeah, I know where the dent is on that.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So this is in the state. Right now, it's in the Varna Memorial Armory. The artillery shell strikes here and explodes. Gardner is standing here. Jones is standing here. Jones has his head taken right off. Is blown back. Gardner has his arm taken off where his shoulder and his ribs, all that whole left side of him gets blown off, and he gets blown back. And Strait comes over Gardner, and Gardner is I'm gonna stop sharing this because you guys can see it. Is reported saying, "Hallelujah, hallelujah! Tell my wife I died happy. Praise the Lord." And tell him, make sure you gets my Bible. And he takes his Bible out and he hands it to his best friend, Albert Strait. And Albert Strait ends up getting the Bible to his wife, and they buried them out there. And then a couple of weeks later, they came out and they knew where they were buried, and they knew they were wrapped in a red carpet. And they unburied. They exhumed Alfred's corpse, and they took him home to Swansea. For years, they thought he was buried in Gettysburg. He's recorded as buried in Gettysburg, but he's actually buried in a cemetery in Swansea. So that Bible has been it's at the Varnum Armory. A couple of years back, the guy, he's the president now. He's a good friend of mine, Patrick Donovan. He was doing he was posting stuff on like military history pages. And this guy that's collector from Virginia reaches out to him. He's like, "Hey," it's like, "I saw what you put about the guy, that Gardner guy, and the canon and the Bible and all this stuff." He's like, "I got something for you." So he sent it to him. It's a book. You open the book up, and it says, I forgot her name, the wife's name, and you go page by page. Every page is every letter that he ever sent her, and the flowers are still preserved. The color is still original. So you see flowers, you see like violets from the Battle of Antietam, the battlefield in 1862 that looks like it was picked yesterday. Dude, it's absolutely mind-blowing how this stuff has survived history. The guy who commanded the battery, his uniform, the hat he was wearing when he got shot. It's just like, we've had Patrick on before, and I've gone and we've gone hours in discussion about the various coincidences and synchronicities that exist at Varnum, and it's just it's so many like ways that these like little items through history have come together in one place. It's just yeah, it's amazing. So Gettysburg, tell me about your what you know about Gardner. Anything you want to speak
You
about?
just said it all in a good. I don't need to repeat what you just said. You
All
just
right,
gave me the. I didn't know about Albert until this year when you told me, because I found him over in West Greenwich, his
yeah,
burial spot. You said, "Hey, he's around the corner from you."
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
right.
know that. I knew nothing about him. I knew of Alfred, but not Albert.
Oh,
I wonder.
Albert, yeah, Albert Strait, yeah. He's right in where Nellie Vaughan is buried.
Yeah,
Another another fantastic topic for from Rhode Island history.
I tell you, you got
Um,
to do a part two because this is crazy. There's a lot.
there is. So Mercy Brown, everybody knows about Mercy Brown. We also had Nellie Vaughan. Sarah Tillinghast was another one.
Yeah.
Tell me what you know about the Rhode Island vampires. About
Yeah,
events.
to me, it's a bunch of yahoos that shouldn't have been doing this stuff because
Yeah,
modern science was kind of like going up very high back then.
yeah.
But then again, people's sometimes morals get crossed with that. And I do
Superstitions.
know that Mercy's father was very sorry for what he had done up until the day he passed away.
Yeah,
The way that he had what he had done to his
it was
daughter, and
barbaric, dude. It was just like, what are you
yeah,
doing, dude? And it's like 1892. We're not talking about like that 1600s. Like, it's
right,
not like
right,
they were like selling wood styles. Maybe people were a little bit like coerced and stuff by the Lord. This wasn't even like that. This was just like
yeah.
a little over
It,
100 years ago, you know?
it baffles me because modern science was ramping up. You had guys like Thomas Edison coming up with stuff.
Yep.
Medical stuff was starting to ramp up,
Yep.
and it just baffles me how like something like that can bamboozle the people into actually, oh, this minister's right. Maybe I should do this.
Right.
And I guess
Right.
when you're in a state of despair like that, anything
You
to
lose your
help.
entire family. So there was
Yeah.
like, I think there were like 5 or 6 children, right? And they were
His
all
wife,
in a wife, and they were all
yeah,
dying of
tuberculosis.
tuberculosis, what we would call now. But they thought it was some weird like vampire disease, right?
Yeah, and just
And
because of the
then
way they resumed her, that it looked like
her
her
nails
nails
were
were still
growing.
growing, yeah, and the blood was going, but we do know that, like, in Rhode Island and New England, you really can't bury people back then in the cold weather when she passed away, so
All
they
right.
put her in a cold storage, and when they finally got her into the ground, and then, of course, her brother was having issues, and all that vampire stuff started going rampant, so they dug her up, and when they dug up the mother and the sisters, they had shown signs of rotting, so it's like, "Oh, okay, they're rotting," but then when they dug up Mercy, they're like, "Whoa, she's not rotting, she's
Right.
gotta be a vampire."
Right.
Uh, so it was, very barbaric, and like I said, the father was very, to the day that he passed away, was very, very, saddened that he had done that. Not to
So
mention he lost his whole family, you
right.
know?
So they exhumed the body. They cut her chest open. They pulled her heart out. There's a rock. The rock is probably the
Yep,
same rock. It's still there.
it
And
is.
they burned it. They burned it. They took the ashes and they made an elixir. This sounds like nothing scientific at all. Don't
Yeah.
try this at home, kids. And they fed it to the brother in hopes that the vampire elixir would solve his health problems. And it didn't, and he died.
Real quickly too, and the thing is he was doing good when he went to Colorado and he came back, and
Yep.
my theory is, like, viruses can, hibernate, which is,
Yeah.
like, one of the reasons, like, when people open up tombs of the mummies, they say, "Oh, it's a curse." It's actually a hibernated virus,
Right. It's
and
bacteria. Yeah.
in that time period, they're now reintroducing this virus that was in Mercy
Yep.
back to my brother who might have been healing, and it's just like, now you just sped everything up and you killed the dude.
Yeah,
Uh,
right back to him. Yep.
yeah. Oh,
It's terrible.
yeah.
1892. Like, oh, Lizzie Borden, that happened in 1892. I don't know, but I feel like science was like evolving, that we were starting to have realization. Sigmund Freud was doing his thing. There was some breakthroughs in mental and physical health, and hearing
Yeah,
around on farms where we're exhuming people because they're vampires. No, I do not believe in vampires. I think it's all bullshit.
it
It's all
is.
superstition.
I think it's bullshit too. It's all stunts from Vlad the Impaler and stories told down, and
Yeah,
of course,
legends.
Bram Stoker's kind of like kind of spiked it. It is
Kind of
bullshit.
rev things up a bit. Yeah, kind of got people going. The one thing I will say about that cemetery where Mercy Brown is buried right there, Chestnut Hill Cemetery, I believe it's right at 102 in Exeter. It is definitely haunted, but that's probably because that people they didn't bury their dead in the wintertime. They put them in the crypt, and they weren't always dead, from what I understand. And they had
Yeah,
some
that's a
had like a
common
little
thing.
bell. Some had a
Yeah,
little bell. What the fuck?
yeah, the
What the fuck?
graveyard sitch, the old dead ringer. There's so many names for that. That was, man,
Oh,
that's been around for a while.
that's
But yeah, I
horrifying.
mean, it's. I don't think it's her haunting it. I think there's a lot of other stuff. Hopefully, she's moved on.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't. When I go there, I don't investigate her spot because I want to give her rest. Because she's been. I think if she is haunting it, it's because she's been desecrated and dug up. Her stone's been stolen. I mean, if you're gonna haunt something,
yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna haunt you for doing that.
You would
Uh,
think, yeah, but
mhm.
one of the most haunted cemeteries. I'm not a big as an investigator. I've only really investigated a few cemeteries, but one of the most unbelievably haunted cemeteries I've ever been in is Elder Blue in Cumberland, Rhode Island, and I've had some really like wild personal experiences there.
Mhm.
But that is also one of the most vandalized cemeteries in all of Rhode Island. There was
Yeah,
and as a history guy, one of the first times I was there, it's a small hill cemetery. It's not very big. It has a lot of like strong religious ties because the people that had a church right there buried all their dead there, and they were like super conservative Christians. And there was a stone leaning on a tree, like it was a broken piece of stone. You picked that. It was oh god, it was like flint, so you can tell it was from that era, and it said died at Bunker Hill, Battle of Bunker Hill, and it had the date, and the name was barely visible. It's like, what the fuck? This guy like gave his life for this country before we were a country, and we can't even appreciate and memorialize this. Out of all the stones that are broken here, they break
yeah,
this guy's stone. Like, come on. So I can totally
yeah.
get why that place is haunted, but don't daytime, nighttime. I don't think it matters. All
No,
I've
no, that's another silly thing. Everybody thinks like ghosts will like come out at night. I'm like, yeah, they do for television shows. They're
right.
they're around all the time.
Right.
Yeah,
When people go live, yeah.
it's I don't know how close we're getting to, but the one thing that will upset me highly and turn me into my ex-army self is if I catch someone vandalizing a cemetery, I might get arrested. Um, because or they might not find the guy because we're in a cemetery. So what a great
Great
place to put
place
them
to bury the
afterwards.
dead. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Right. That's
No.
I've spent time with local Blackstone Cemetery historical restoration project. This guy Ken Postle, he's a wonderful man. He's a good Christian. He goes out to spends all his free time restoring all these historical cemeteries that are lost, forgotten, overgrown. I've helped him. I was in a cemetery with this guy in North Providence, and we found we dug in. We found the veteran stone. What was his name? Oh God, what was his name? He was a captain, and he died at Fredericksburg in the Civil War. And we were poking down with the sticks, and we found the original stone. We dug it up out of like 6 inches of the dirt. It was in three pieces. We put it back together, and he reset the stuff. Took out the base, put the base in, set the base right, reset the stone, used all the appropriate stuff. You don't use cement. People
No.
have done that and destroyed, but there's certain epoxies that they use that's really super expensive, and just bring life back. Like give these people that are forgotten in history. I think that's one reasons I don't want to be buried. I want to just be cremated because you get
Yeah.
forgotten about. People kick your stone over. They don't even know you're there anymore. It's just like what's the point, you know?
And once your family goes, your memory is gone. And it doesn't happen too often. I don't think it's happened ever since I've been alive. But even when you pass away, you do have to pay an upkeep for that cemetery. And if the family's gone, if said burial ground decides to uproot you and throw you somewhere else, they
There you
can.
go. Right.
They can do that. They don't do that too often over here. I haven't seen it done at all.
Hmm.
Especially if you ever want to investigate a haunted cemetery with me, one of the worst I think in the state of Rhode Island is called Pine Grove in Coventry.
Oh, I was gonna say
That
Persian Flood, but I know Pine Grove too. That's a lot of Civil War guys, right? That's
Yeah,
yeah.
Civil War Rev guys in the back. A lot of the problems that lie in they were actually using that cemetery for satanic
Of course.
rituals.
In the 80s
People
it
were
was big.
actually, yeah, people were actually murdered in there. There was a guy's corpse that was taken out of these resting spot, and the kids had danced with it on the train tracks that used to be there.
Yep.
And then when they dropped it there, my friend, who happened to one day walking home from the middle school, came across it. Wow. And it messed him up severely. But that area is there's an area in there I call the baby cemetery, and you can hear kids playing, and there's no houses around there for kids to be playing in.
Right.
And it makes you start to cry. I mean, like, it's anything like that makes me that tear jerks me right there hearing that, because the innocence of the children. And death has no like discrimination with age,
God, no. Yeah.
anything. So yeah, it's just sad. And Coventry got wiped out by the yellow plague in the early 1900s, and it eliminated a lot of the children. So there's a big section of that in there. I've actually been scratched in there. I've been pushed. All sorts of. I've had negative entities attached to me and come home with me.
Oh, we gotta go, man. I've had so many people tell me about this cemetery. I'm like, I'll get there. I drive by it all the time because my mom works in Coventry. But
just let me know, man.
Yeah.
So
that's
let
awesome.
me know. We'll go together, and maybe we could do a co-shoot for the horrors of history. And
absolutely, dude.
We can run. We just got to bring bug spray. We can do one of your shows from outside the field, and the back end of it is actually where the Coventry Redlegs trained before they went up to the Varnum.
Oh wow.
So that's still back there. And that's right behind there. Not too many people know it's there, because the guy that owned the property before he gave it to the town actually kept it really well preserved so no one would mess with it.
Yep.
Now it's open to the public.
Yep. Speaking of Coventry, not first, but one of the first historical places I ever investigated and was ever involved with was the Nathaniel Green homestead. I actually volunteered there for several years. I've been in there alone and heard the knobs jingle upstairs. I have it on recording. It's not just like a home where one of the greatest generals in American history built, and he only lived there for a few years, and so hundreds of his family live there. But then you go out into the grounds, and this is not something that they advertise, but their curator told me this, that in the cemetery area, in the 1980s, it was a kid, a local Coventry kid. And if honestly, anybody who was born in the 80s or before, they knew like homosexuality was not at all acceptable at all, and especially with the with the spread of AIDS and whatnot, and it just made it all that much more worse if you were gay in this country. But this kid, he was outed, and three guys like invite, hey, let's go and like drink some beers, blah blah blah, and they had him out. They were all freaking teenagers, and they bludgeoned this kid to death with a rock in the cemetery. It's like, you don't know about that kind of stuff, but in that cemetery there was some noises I couldn't pinpoint. It's a very there's not a lot of houses. They own a lot of that land. The river's down there. The old train tracks are down there. But just, oh man, amazing! There's amazing. So many things in Rhode Island that you could go, and you could go. They do stuff that I've investigated a few times at Nat Green. I've had David on actually the last show I did, so really open to a lot of this stuff. Believe it or not, a lot of you would think historians are all like snobs and like wealthy people who don't really believe, not wealthy, but they just don't believe in the paranormal. I know more historians who have more like paranormal ties than actual paranormal people do. It's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Especially when you hang out in the structures more than the everyday person like myself and Fort Adams, to go back to that.
Yeah.
I've experienced so much in there because I was there like countless hours. And it's almost like the spirits got used to me being there, that they would interact with me more than they would other folks in there. But yeah, to go back to Nathaniel Green's, my sister, I don't know if you know Laura, we were actually out there during one of the Rev War encampments at nighttime, and she heard, and she's got it on her phone somewhere, the train going behind. So she heard a phantom train, and I'm like, yeah, get out of here. Like, you didn't hear any train. And then she plays back the actual auto. I'm like, damn, you did hear a train go behind that thing.
The train tracks are right.
That whole area.
But they haven't been used in decades.
No.
So yeah, it's been a bike path for at least 20 years. So yeah, it's kind of cool how that phantom shit just kind of like holds on. That energy kind of still holds on.
I wonder
Um,
why. I wonder why with certain things like that, like cars and trains, like it's got to be residual, like kind of like recording in the atmosphere or on the grounds why it happens.
yeah.
Because it's not just people have seen phantom cars. I've had that experience recently up in New York. My niece and I were driving down in Chattagat this road, and there were headlights right behind us for a good
Hmm.
distance. And then we go to turn around and we look back and go, "Damn, where the hell do those headlights go?"
Hmm.
And when I drove back the next day to see maybe if there was roads on the side of the cornfield, dude, nothing. So my poor niece was like, "I am never driving down that road in the dark ever again." I'm like, "Yeah, that was cool. That was a phantom car. That was cool."
I
I
will.
just,
I
oh,
will I will t I will tell you something. When we were, like, teenagers, we used to do what you would call legend tripping. Now, we go to these, like, Mercy Brown, Nellie Vaughan, we go to these, like, lad school. We go to these, like, haunted locations or allegedly hoping to experience something and just getting, like, really scared. But there was one time we went to the Nellie Vaughan grave, and being you know the area, it's out in West
yeah,
Kingston, folks. It's one of the most remote areas in Rhode Island. It's a very, long you go down a very long country road that gets narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower,
yeah,
and you come to a crossroad, and like you could stop in the middle of the road, turn off your car, and look at your hand, and like you wouldn't see your hand right in front of you. It is so dark.
yeah,
So you go down this country road, you come to a crossroads, and there's like an old church that's boarded up. Looks like something out of a horror movie. And the cemetery that this vampire is allegedly buried in. She's not a vampire. She's a teenage girl. This is another, superstition. Albert Strait's buried in there, the guy that committed the Gettysburg gun. But we went there. We played around in the cemetery for a while. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. We're driving back from there. It looked like I was driving. I had a little Subaru, and I had like 6 people in the car, so way too many people. People are sitting on laps in the back seat. We were like 16, 17 years old, just having a good time, drinking some beers, just doing that thing. Driving back, right? And I keep seeing this. It looked like a tractor trailer, but these roads, these are the country roads.
yeah. They don't fit down there,
You
right?
don't see tractor trailers down these roads. It kept coming like right up on my ass. Like this guy's gonna hit me. Like what? And I kept going faster, and then he'd be way back, and then he'd catch up again. Like what the fuck? So I got far enough ahead of him. I'm like, I'm just gonna let this guy pass, and I pulled over. Like no word of lie. This is like one of the first like holy shit paranormal
Yeah,
experiences I had. There was nobody there. There was no vehicle past me. We looked back, and it was completely darkness. It's like, what the fuck did we just see? And we screwed up the Bigfoots in Cranston, and we all had breakfast. We were all like just talking about it for hours. How was that? No, there was a truck. We saw the headlights. We saw the light. We saw the beams. We saw the reflection. It was
yeah.
I've never been able to explain it. I've never been able to. I always like, yeah, maybe it was phantom. Maybe it was the alcohol. I didn't think we were drinking that much, but I don't know, dude. I don't know, but it was about 11 years later where I really started having more regular paranormal experiences. I'm like, I got to do this. There's something more to this shit, and I dove headfirst into it. But what got you into this dark world we call the paranormal? This interesting. Um,
I wasn't as a young kid. I really wasn't into the history. Not that that's a shocker. I was more into video games and dinosaurs as a kid.
yeah, right.
But I remember I was watching. Man, it was sightings back in the day,
Oh yeah,
and the one guy I think he passed away. He's one of the most he's one of the guys that started this. He was on Queen Anne,
yep,
back where the swimming pool was, and I'm watching this with my mother. And I remember him recording all. He didn't have all this fancy gear that we have now,
of course
and
not. Yeah,
you could hear this little girl laughing. I'm like, no way. I'm like, I replayed it. I'm like, oh crap! I caught a little girl down there laughing. Like that to me hooked me. I'm like,
hmm,
okay, I like this stuff, and I knew that there was problems in my house, which I don't recommend. The old saying, "Don't shit where you eat." I
right.
don't recommend doing that, but I'm like,
Don't do
I'm
it.
curious. I'm curious. So
Yeah.
my mother says there's stuff in the house.
Hmm.
One night I was laying down in my bedroom upstairs. Now, a woman had passed away in my house downstairs. And I said, hey, if there's anybody here, knock on the wall 3 times. And I did the whole haircut and the thing with that.
Yep. Yep.
I got it right back. And I'm like, my hair
Mm.
stood up on my arms, and I would not sleep in my room for a couple nights. And then I just started this is cool. there's got to be more to this. And
Mhm.
one of my friends, I said, my house is haunted. He didn't believe me. He was making a joke of it. And on my wall was, the old Johnny Red flag because, I have family members in the South too that I honor.
Mhm.
And he saw a shadow hand go right over one of the stars. And
Wow.
he wakes me up and goes, "Dude, I saw a hand go over the star." And I'm like, "Yeah, I told you this place had issues." We've had in that house a rocket chair, like the coincidental going out of nowhere. Yeah, it happened.
Yep.
He went out there one night to sleep because he couldn't sleep in my room, and the rocket chair is rocking next to him. That was probably the last time he stayed over at my place. Now you remember my friend Tony Jones, the 6'11" guy.
Yeah, Tony Jones is a great dude. Rhode Island
So
radio.
yeah, he's coming over to stay, and I tell him, I said, "Dude, this place is haunted." And I get the whole thing like, "Yeah, I don't believe in ghosts." And my dryer in the back room, you just hear the door go bang. He wakes up, comes up, and goes, "I'm leaving." He's like, "I'm done." I'm like, "I thought you didn't believe me." He goes, "It had to be your cat." I'm like, "Dude, there's no cats back there."
Right.
But, we've had all sorts of stuff in there. And when I started doing the investigations, I got picked on big time. And
Mhm.
I would go out with just a VHS camera that someone donated to me and
Yep.
just sit there with that and record it. Sometimes I got good stuff, sometimes I got nothing. But when I started doing that, man, the kids started really like torturing me.
Oh, I'm sure.
And
Yeah, it
it
was.
wasn't,
You were a
yeah,
pariah in those days.
yeah, I was called Ghost Boy, you name it,
Yeah,
Freak
of
Boy, you
course.
name it. And then all of a sudden, like, in my 20s, and I give Jay credit for this, Ghost Hunters comes out.
Hmm.
And now my love for the paranormal is getting fueled even more. Like it is
Of
speeding
course.
high train. And I actually, a couple of years later, bumped into Keith at one of his filmings. I saw Jay and Grant down there recording.
Yep.
I didn't get to see Jay and Grant, but a year later, I become really good friends with Keith. He ends up on my
Oh,
show.
love
And
Keith.
yeah, and he's been a really big influence as
Hmm.
far as that goes. And I started to get in good with a lot of the, ghost hunters. Became friends with them because I saw them as people that they love the stuff that I love.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, these people that are picking on me are like, "Hey, these guys? Can you introduce me to them?" I'm like, "No, screw you, man! Like you
Right.
tortured me as a kid. Get the
Right.
hell away from
The
me."
same stuff, but get out of here. Right.
Yeah,
Jason Hawes, they were one of the first to do it. I mean, he was doing it before he was a TV show. He had that the
tap.
Atlantic Paranormal. They had the website that had all these haunted places that you could check out. And,
I love Jay, and I've never met him. I've worked with his kids at Cracker Barrel. I
Oh, I
know
know it's a
Satori.
story. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I know Satori very well. I don't
Good
know
kid.
the Samantha too well,
Hmm.
but I've never met Jay. And the thing is, like, I think Jay has an issue with me because I do portray a clown, and Jay hates clowns. But I do see him, and I'm not kissing ass. I do see him as a role model, and I would
Oh,
love
for
to
sure.
just one day just sit there and say, "Dude, can we go story for story, history for history?"
Right.
I don't, I don't want to get on your show. Like I've been on television. I could care less. I just want to pick the guy's mind and let him know, like, not only was he a huge inspiration to me, but even before I knew who he was super flippin' kind to my mother, who is even bigger than this than I was. And we know she passed away about 8 years ago. But
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry to
I
hear the news.
remember going to Barnes and Nobles because she got so excited when his book came out.
Hmm.
And my mother's health had started sliding downhill really, really rapidly then. She's standing out in the line in her walker. And Jay and Grant came up to her and said, "Hey, what are you doing standing out here, lady?" And brought her over and had, in front of everybody and signed the books. Later on, she tells me this is back in the day with MySpace that she
Yep.
would talk to him about planting tomatoes and everything, and like how kind he was to her. And she just loved him. And then when she found out, like later on, like I was friends with Keith, I introduced Keith to her, and she kind of fangirled out.
Yeah.
Um, and Keith was very, very kind to her, and because he is a kind man, very kind man.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
Keith Johnson's awesome.
they all are. I have no problems with any of them. I don't care about their private life or anything, but they all have been more than kind to me.
Yep.
Uh, and it's just he's a huge role model. And someday I want to sit down and talk with him, and just bullshit about stuff. You
Pick
know,
his brain for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
See.
yeah, because he is like a modern day version of Ed and Lorraine. Like he is our version of that. if he wasn't doing what he did, I don't think there'd be so many units out there. You know what I mean? So many people trying to start ghost units and everything because he inspired that. He got a lot
Oh,
of
of
that stuff
course.
working.
There's a lot of people I knew who grew up watching ghost hunters, and that's the whole basis of to why they started investigating, because they wanted to know more about that. I did catch it every now and again. I do like the first like couple seasons. I like the last season. There's some in the middle that are not so great. But again, that's like no, they were under Sci-Fi Network. They were under. They're
Yeah,
probably not producing the show. I know he wasn't producing the show. I liked it when I liked the first season so much where they would go to like they'd have two investigations on one show. They go to like say the New Bedford Armory, which was awesome because the cameraman got pushed, and that was
that
the
was
first show I
awesome.
seen by them. I'm like, oh my god, this is great. And then they'd go to like a house, and then like, oh, we didn't find anything, but what we did find is like that, like, hey, your pipes are loose, so like that.
Yeah,
What it sounds like someone going up the stairs. We think it's the pipes rattling, or like you have like old wiring that if you get that replaced, those feelings of paranoia might disappear because this is why you're having them. And they would do that, and not everything was paranormal all the time. Not everything was like. It seems like I stopped watching the paranormal shows a while ago because it seemed like everything that people put out was like, this is the devil, this is a demon, this is demonic. I hate to even use that
yeah.
word sometimes. It's just
Everything is demonic in everybody's eyes now. Like,
Hollywoodized and monetized, and it's just ugh. It's not. What happened to like I call him the asshole ghost? Why can't they just be an asshole? They were an asshole in life. They're gonna be an asshole in death. Why is it
right?
not just an asshole? Why is it gonna be something like supernatural that's tied to all this religious shit? I'm not so big into that, but
Yeah, I
it's
mean, I agree with that. I mean, if you're a sharpshooter out west and you've bludgeoned and killed a bunch of people and you die like uh, at the same way, like, do you honestly think that guy, if he's sticking around, is going to change his ways? Because he's not going to heaven, obviously, because he's sticking around.
right.
So he's going to have some sort of like vendetta against all of us in the first place, and
Of
you're
course.
chilling in his area.
Right.
So yeah, like if you're an asshole ghost, it's probably because you were an asshole in real life. Like,
Yeah.
has nothing to do with demons. Like, I've done a investigation at the Pain House,
Yes.
and I got
Great
frustrated
haunted,
with this one
great
what,
haunted place.
with this one group because they kept saying it's demonic, and I'm like, get the hell out of here with that shit. I'm like, I've been coming into this structure since I was 7 years old. I'm like, it
Yep.
smells like my grandma's house, and whatever ghosts are in here, they're not flipping demonic. I'm like, stop wishing that shit because eventually enough people do that and
It's
that
gonna
negative energy
spawn.
will manifest. I'm like, get the hell out of
Yeah,
here with that.
for sure.
Like,
Uh,
it's
the Pain
you know,
House is. I hope it's not demonic. Because I investigated there with a few times. One of the times we were there was Ken DaCosta
I
was
love
doing
Ken.
a great guy. I love Ken DaCosta. I
Mhm.
hope to get him on the show eventually. He's starting to like slow down and stuff. But he was doing they were doing public tours there. And it was like but they were having like it was like the worldwide ghost hunting day. So he did experiments there, and he invited all like different people from different groups. So I was investigating with like Rick from PLS and like Maggie from the Rhode Island Paranormal Research Group. We're all together and broken up, and you would ask like the same questions each group and see if you got similar answers or whatever. It's all very well designed. Ken has a thing with designing like investigating and sessions and stuff that are really unique. And 3 times we heard it on the ghost box, and I got EVPs, buddy. My like so if it's demonic and they know my name, that makes me feel. I mean, not a ghost knows my name. That's a little uneasy too. But I mean, I'd rather have a ghost than like the thing that like took over Reagan and made her crawl backwards down the stairs. I'm not going to do that. I would rather not do that. Projectile vomit, have an exorcism. I honestly, I think it's just. I think it's maybe it's a thing. Maybe I believe in positive and negative. Of course, I'm a big energy guy, and I think a lot of this stuff is connected to energy. But I think it's way more rare than we would. I don't know than people let it out to be.
Yeah,
Maybe
if
just
I
me.
ever think something has even a slight hint of demonic stuff to it, I will not bother with that. I
Hmm.
will contact Keith and say, "Hey, Keith, like these people are looking for help.
Yep.
I don't know this stuff. That's your ball field."
Right.
I do have what is called my ex used to always call me this all the time. I have what's called a magnetic personality. I have the the way of attracting stuff. And I don't want to be attracting any demons. And so when it comes to that stuff, the minute I hear that, I'm like, I'm done. I just had a recent incident. You know what Lincoln Woods is? Lincoln
Yes.
Woods got a
Yes.
lot of stuff in it, both elemental, you name it. I was locking up the gates at the end of the night as a park ranger, and I saw this weird like mist. Now, at first, I'm like, okay, I'll debunk it. That's gas from the you know the swamp over there.
Right.
I get back home, and where I'm living, I have amulets hanging from my statues, and it what followed me home that I noticed ripped that amulet off. So it was almost like
Mm.
you think you got protection, you don't now, buddy. And it was
Right.
strong enough where it bent the collapse.
Mm.
Eventually, I had to go down to one of my friends who you know very well, to Tom D'Agostino in Arlene,
Oh yeah, great
because
author. Great author.
it would not let go. It was scratching me. It was throwing stuff at me, and I'm like, listen, I've dealt with spirits before, and I'm usually able to get them to let go. But I'm like, I needed my elder to say, hey, make this thing go. I'll send you pictures of the scratches, and almost looks like three like finger punks to the side of my temple.
Mhm.
When it let go, like the day of it, I had this really intense headache, and then it's like almost like euphoric, like pleasure tingles going to my head when it was gone.
Yep.
And that came out of Lincoln Woods, and I was not investigating anything. I was just locking up a damn gate to go home.
You
But that
should have.
thing was nasty enough to say, "Hey, I'm coming home with you, buddy."
Wow.
Uh,
I've been to Lincoln Woods plenty of times. Plenty of times. Walking, fishing, hiking. I've never experienced anything weird. Not to say that there isn't. But
I'll take you to a couple spots that have some unique
speaking of
activity.
speaking of Tom D'Agostino, he took me out years ago. He took my group and led us out to the old Ramtail Mill
Oh yeah,
site. That's one of Rhode Island's. Speaking of Rhode Island again, Rhode Island dubbed it as haunted in the census in 1880, and it was a small village that was built. Now it's all woods. It was a small village that was built around an old mill. It was an old I think it was like a yarn or
yeah,
it was a woolen mill. It was a Foster Woolen Manufacturing Company, and in 1821, there was a group of guys who owned it. It was an older gentleman and his like son-in-laws and his sons, and one of the son-in-laws, Pele Walker, got into a lot of financial debt, and I think there was some argument with him and the father-in-law, and he threatened that the next time they took the keys out of his hand, it would be out of the hands of a dead man. And this guy, the only thing that this guy could do, because all the debt he had, was to be the night watchman. So he'd watch the place at night. He would do rounds, and then he'd ring the bell in the morning to alert the workers it was time to go to work. So the workers woke up that morning. There was no bell. It was everybody's late for work. They all went down to the mill. That the doors were still locked. They broke in. They found this guy. Now there's two stories. One story
mhm,
said that he was hanging from the bell rope. The other story said he slit his own throat. But they did take the keys like right from him, and from that moment on, there was people would wake up in the middle of the night hearing the bell. So it happened so much that they cut the rope down. The bell would still ring. They removed the bell. The bell would still ring. They're like, this place is haunted, and they screwed. The mill shut down. The structure burned down. I seen a picture in the 1880s of three girls and three
yeah.
daughters with the that's a cool spot. But now it's all woods, and you're in the Foster, Rhode Island is a super woodsy area. There's not a lot of population. So you're out there with a K2. There is no electrical lines. There's no houses. There's no nothing. You can't even hear cars on the road like a couple miles away. You're like bordering reservoir property. And the K2 meter's like, blah, 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 and you're getting voices and you're getting this whole foundation. It's just so wicked cool. It's just another, like these little pieces of Rhode Island history that still exist out there in the woods and waiting to be found. It's on public land. You can go and walk around out there. Although I heard they blocked off the trails. I know it was like reservoir property now, so
Yeah. Well,
you can't get out there anymore. But
you get the ramtail. Do not cross that water though. I do know that one of the gentlemen's is a security guard there, and they do show up rather quickly the minute you go to the other side.
yeah,
Because on the other side of Ramtail, there's even a farm tucked away that
Rounds Farm. Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard about that too. Tom told me all about that. How they found that, and
Yeah, it's all rotted. I'm
yep.
not going to say which paranormal guy did, but there was a paranormal guy that was five-finger discounting stuff from the structure. Not that it
Uh,
belongs to anybody, but still, I should have just let it be. But I won't say who it
yeah,
was.
yeah. You don't do that stuff. That's I
No.
took a. We were. I'll share this little part with you about taking stuff from paranormal locations before we wrap this up tonight. I was given the opportunity to investigate the lad school. So this is illegal. Legal. This is the lad. This is the Fogarty Hospital. A lot of controversy, a lot of abuse and neglect there. Doing like dental surgery on developmentally and intellectually disabled adults and children without the use of anesthesia. Just like awful abuse cases. It was that building and the rehab building that was still standing. They hadn't knocked them down yet. A really good friend of mine has connections and got me in there legally. State police knew about it. It was fine. Like, just don't leave the first floor. We had probably like 6 or 7 EVPs at Fogarty that were clear as day, and it was me and a woman, and there was nobody else in this building, and there were voices like clear as day. But one of them said, "Who did that and why?" And as this EVP comes through, I'm picking up a piece of tile. I broke it into like a little piece like this, a little piece of floor tile, and I put it in my pocket. And I went, I got the dude. I couldn't. I had it in my car for like a week. I'm like, I can't. It made me feel uneasy. It made me feel gross. All the nasty hate and anger that's trapped in that piece of land over like 75 years of awful history. I'm like, I can't. And I took it and I tossed it out the window. And with that, maybe it was supernatural, maybe it wasn't, but I will never do that ever. I will never take the whole building was destroyed and the rubble was cleared. It's all flat land now. And it's like the fire academies over there. You never know it was like a huge institution. But so many horrible, horrible stories from that. Kids going missing, kids being found dead in the woods. Like, oh, we found them, and they never investigate. Just like Gary Heyman and Samuel Finn. There's a book, 2 kids that went missing. I've had mediums tell me that they think it was a maintenance worker, and they would lure kids. And like, I showed them pictures, and they would tell me like these heart-wrenching stories of this kid being strangled in the woods, just like awful. But I mean, don't take things from paranormal locations.
No, don't.
I'm not a big fan of haunted objects. I know people that have the haunted dolls. Good for you guys. Somebody's got to love them, but it's not going to be me. I fucking hate dolls to begin with. And if it's haunted with maybe a demonic, yeah, get the hell out of here. I'm not putting that in my house. But anyway, God bless the people that do, because that's what everybody needs, a little bit of love. So it's been awesome. Rendrag, holy shit, Selrahc
Selrahc. Yes,
Selrahc.
Rendrag Selrahc. There you go.
Starting this evening. Where can people find you if I get your thing running at the bottom? So tell us a little bit about your YouTube.
I'm on Rendrag Selrahc on Facebook. Also, it's up there as well as Horror of History. It is private, but if you send me an invite, I will get you in there. And of course, Horrors of History up on YouTube. You look up Horrors of History at Patriotic Pirate 1979, and I'm up there. So.
That's fantastic, dude. I love the focus on history. I catch all your episodes. I think it's great. Keep doing what you're doing. You. And we gotta get, dude. There's so many places in Rhode Island to investigate. You don't have to focus on the one that's like $250 a night. There are Kane House, $35. You can go in there and do what you want. Smith's Castle, $30. Nat Green Homestead, Fort Adams. I could go on and on. You don't have to go to these like places that are on the map because of movies. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. There are plenty of other places that give all the money goes right back to the historical organization that's preserving these buildings. I did that for a number of years. The East Greenwich Historical Society. They were housed in an old jail, and I raised money. I had people come in, investigate. I took that money. I gave it right back to the organization so they could, help to keep things alive, keep this history, keep our past alive. As ugly as it is sometimes, it's always key to remember our history and to learn from the past.
Right. I'll leave it at this. Tom McDonald has one of the best lines I've ever heard in a song. Every country is stained with a little blood on it. Mm-hmm. We're no different.
Oh, for sure. and America is no exception. So tune in. This week we're going to be Van Down by the River. We're going to be going out to Block Island, filming episode 5 of Three Dudes Brews. Me and the Greekiest Greek I know, Costas and Ed. We're going to be out there at Club Soda, the best dive bar in New England, and we're going to have beers with Ricky, and we'll put that one up there probably around Labor Day, and then right after Labor Day, me and the boys are going to northern New Hampshire, Maine area. My annual retreat to one of the most remote camping spots I know. Honestly, I see more moose and eagle and smallmouth bass and trout than I do people, and it's my reset button. I go out there and I just shut off, drink some of the best beers, have some of the best food. So we're going to be doing a Three Dudes Brews live camping edition. Well, I'm bringing some like tremendous beers. We're going to talk great beers by the fire. We're going to talk great fishing. It's going to be live. We usually get pre-recorded special. We're going to be live from way the hell up there in an area that up until a couple of years ago, I didn't even get cell phone service. So, and we're going to be doing a live special from the middle of the woods. So tune in for that. The mid card should be back with Bams, and as soon as Bams comes back, we're going to be talking football. There'll be baseball playoffs. We're going to be talking about how the Dolphins are going to like dominate the AFL, AFC, all this great stuff. The hell with the Chiefs, Taylor Swift. So stay tuned to a Van Down by the River podcast for all your great sports and paranormal and beer activity. Cheers to the guys at Line Cider. Jeremy, you did a great job. And for Rendrag, Selrahc, this has been another edition of The Ghost and the Ghost, the Ghost and the Goat. Thank you for tuning in. Everybody have a good week. Next week, come back. We have Nicole Magic. She's a medium. She's going to be doing live readings. So tune in for that. That's always a great time when we have a medium on here. They always blow us away. Tune in for that next Tuesday live at 8 p.m. Good night, everybody, and have a lovely week.
Thank you.